Tim ran the scarlet red lipstick slowly across his lips. He paused for a moment before gently pressing them together, the way he had seen his mum do countless times before when applying lipstick. He stared directly into the large mirror which dominated one wall of the front room of his house and allowed himself a moment to reflect on his transformation. He had certainly taken things quite far. As well as his beautiful lipstick, he had applied a light layer of foundation, a puff of blush to his cheeks, a striking bronze eyeshadow to each eyelid, and a swipe of mascara to each eyelash. His blonde hair had been styled and pushed neatly back with a burgundy velvet hairband. He had even found some clip-on earrings which dangled daintily from each ear. Tim pouted his lips briefly and smiled as he stepped away from the mirror and into the center of the room. He looked at the clock, 2:57 p.m. He took a deep breath and made his way over to the armchair which was in its usual place, pushed back against the far wall of the room. Instinctively smoothing the back of his dress with his hands, Tim slowly lowered himself into the chair and was immediately engulfed by a sea of petticoats. Battling to keep control and remain ladylike, he calmly restored some order and rested his hands in his lap, crossing his legs at his thighs. After a few exciting but rather stressful seconds, he became more settled and was content with his chosen position in the chair. Tim was wearing a beautiful 1950s vintage-style dress, a stunning floral design, a quite brilliant deep burgundy color with various other shades of red and white to complete the detail. While the bodice was designed to be fitted, the knee-length skirt expanded out into a magnificent sea of stunning material. Only the best petticoat would do for this dress, and Tim's petticoat didn't disappoint. It was perfect white, half a dozen layers of magnificent tulle, adding significant volume to the dress and thus turning the relatively simple task of sitting in an armchair into an art. The dress was a perfect fit for Tim's slim body and average height. It had a delicate series of buttons at the back, and as the puff sleeves were only small, Tim had draped a long black shawl over his shoulders to cover his arms and complete the outfit. 2:58 p.m. Tim sat still and waited. He spotted one of his mum's fashion magazines on the coffee table to his right, so leaned over to pick it up. Resting it in his lap, he opened it up about a third of the way through and began to flick through the pages. While he dared not move significantly to lose his comfortable position in the chair, his legs were still crossed and he allowed himself a gentle rock of his top leg over the bottom one. It felt good. He couldn't see his legs or indeed his shoes due to his large skirt, but the feeling of pulling up his stockings and slipping his feet into the cutest pair of Mary Jane shoes he had ever seen was still fresh in the memory. Tim had no problem admitting to himself, at this precise moment in time, he felt incredible. Another couple of minutes passed and Tim found himself a little more relaxed. Everything was quiet. The only sound he could hear was the ticking of the clock and the occasional car drive past on the street outside. He took another deep breath and continued to flick through the pages of the magazine, stopping every so often when he saw a picture he really liked. He glanced up at the clock one more time. It was now just past 3 p.m. Then, suddenly, the door to the room flung open. Startled, Tim looked up from the magazine, his heart skipping a beat as he did so. A mild panic set in as he realized he was no longer alone in the room. He felt his face immediately begin to blush. "Tim? Is that you?" "Oh my God," came an overly enthusiastic voice from the woman in the doorway. "Mom, you're home early," Tim replied, quietly, struggling to get his words out. He wasn't sure where to look or what to do. "Why on earth are you dressed as a woman, Tim?" "Is that my dress?" "It is my dress." "Oh God!" She shut the door behind her and walked a little closer to Tim. She was exquisitely dressed too, wearing a long dark green designer coat, with black skirt and leather-heeled boots peeping out from beneath. She was wearing a red silk scarf and carried a Chanel handbag on the crook of one arm. Air. Tim had no reply. Stand up so I can see you properly, she instructed sternly. Tim stood up, closing the magazine and putting it to one side. He took a step forward and automatically smoothed the skirt of his dress again, this time from all sides, allowing the petticoat to reform in shape and fall back neatly into place. Give me a twirl then, and a curtsy. What? Tim muttered. Give me a twirl and a curtsy. Let me see you, she demanded. Tim did as he was told and slowly turned 180 degrees one way, and then back the other, pausing for a moment to allow his dress to take shape once again. He then followed with a perfectly executed curtsy. Clearly, it was not the first time he had ever curtsied for someone. He treated it as if he was being introduced to the queen. Wow, would you look at you, you sure make a pretty girl, don't you? I'd say this isn't your first time dressed as a girl. Am I right? And you can do makeup too? Tim nodded. And you're wearing stockings? He nodded again. Incredible. She whispered, but loud enough to be heard. Tim stood still, he had nothing to say. There was nowhere to run, he had to just stand there and take whatever his mom was going to throw at him. And how does it make you feel? Tim? She asked curiously. Huh? Tim replied. How does it make you feel? Do you like being a woman? I guess. Tim sounded unsure. So you want to be a woman then? Shall I call the doctor to make the arrangements? She began to giggle uncontrollably. What? Do you want to be? She was unable to finish her question this time. Stop! Tim shouted. What? No, carry on. She insisted. No, Steve, I want to stop. Tim shouted even louder this time. Ah, bloody hell, Tim, you were doing well there. That was the best one yet. It was going fine until you went off script. What was all that how does it make you feel stuff? Do you want to be a woman? That wasn't in the script. Okay, I went a bit off track there, sorry. I just thought I'd take it in a new direction, dig a bit deeper into your character. No, Steve, you took it too far. You were meant to catch me wearing your clothes and then come up with a humiliating punishment, not psychoanalyze me and arrange an operation. Tim began to pace up and down the room, albeit slowly as he was still getting used to walking in his heels. He was angry, but also quite enjoying the movement of his petticoat swishing with each step he took. He stopped and looked over at Steve, his so-called friend of almost 2 years. Steve had called round several hours earlier and had told Tim his idea to create an elaborate roleplay where he, playing the part of Tim's mom, would come home early from an appointment to find her son, Tim, dressed as woman, wearing her clothes and playing housewife. The scene had been planned in fine detail, concentrating on the moment of Tim's mom's entrance and then her thinking up a subsequent punishment for him. They had gone to the trouble of drawing up a script of exact lines for each of them to say, but this was the second time the scene had come to a premature end. Tim had been reluctant to take part at first, but was soon persuaded by Steve's insistence that he should give it a go. While Tim's transformation into looking every bit the beautiful woman had become extremely thorough, Steve's transformation had been less dramatic and more rushed. The large coat he was wearing covered most of what was underneath, and his makeup was less impressive than Tim's. Truth be told, while Tim could almost pass as an attractive young woman, Steve looked more like the boy who was trying on his mother's clothes. But Tim didn't say that out loud. He had agreed to go along with the idea for Steve's benefit, although he would be lying if he said he hadn't enjoyed the day up until this point. I think we're done now. Tim turned to the door. No, no. Hang on. Let's do it through one more time. Please? Steve grabbed Tim's arm and pulled him back from the door. Come on, Steve, we've done it twice already, and it's gone wrong both times. I want to get changed. Tim argued. Remind me why we're doing it again? I told you why, Steve huffed. I've been trying on my mom's clothes in secret for years, but I've always wanted to try your mom's clothes on too. Your mom wears designer labels and vintage dresses. They're much more expensive than my mom's. God, if she heard me say that, she'd kill me. I get that, yes, you like wearing women's clothes. But why bring me into this? I just couldn't believe it when you said you'd never done it before, with a wardrobe full of dresses like your mom has, so you just had to try it yourself. And you've had fun today, right? You can't say you're not enjoying it. Okay, I have quite enjoyed it, but it's still a bit weird and I think we should stop now. Tim was quite insistent. Just one more time, please. We'll go straight to the entrance part, where I come into the room. We'll play it from there for a couple of minutes, then we'll finish. I promise. Tim sighed. Okay, he replied, somewhat reluctantly. Excellent. Okay, give me 5 minutes, then I'll come through the door again. You don't have to be in the chair, maybe be standing at the mirror or something else this time. Just act mortified when I come through the door, okay? Okay. Let's just get it done. Tim watched Steve leave the room and close the door behind him and then walked back over to the mirror to check his makeup. Tim ran the scarlet red lipstick slowly over his lips once again. His lips still looked great, so he perhaps didn't need to, but he quite enjoyed the act of applying it. He was pleased to see that the rest of his makeup still looked perfect. He had been amazed at how easy he had found putting it on today, and how much it transformed his appearance. He took a few steps back so he could see more of himself in the mirror, and in particular the dress he was wearing. It was gorgeous. He felt like $1 million. He found himself unconsciously swaying gently from side to side. He loved the way the dress moved, and how it felt. 5 minutes passed and Steve was due back at any second. Tim stood back closer to the mirror and waited for the door to the room to open. He remained relatively calm. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, but in reality was only a couple more minutes, he heard the door slowly begin to open. Before it had chance to open fully, Tim closed his eyes, took a deep breath and waited for Steve, his mom, to begin the scene again. Suddenly, there came a scream from behind Tim. Tim? Oh my! Steve's voice was much more high-pitched and feminine than before. To Tim it sounded like he had really put some extra effort in this time. Smiling to himself, Tim opened his eyes. But his smile soon disappeared when he saw the reflection in the mirror from over his shoulder. He turned around in horror to see his mom standing in front of him, open-mouthed. This time, however, it wasn't Steve playing Tim's mom, it was his real mom. This was not pretend anymore, he was playing the scene for real. Tim looked mortified. Mom? Oh God. No. Tim, what are you doing? Why are you dressed like that? She asked curiously. It's not what it looks like, I swear. Tim could feel his face burning as he blushed uncontrollably. He wanted to run away, but it was too late now. Well, what is it then? Because from where I'm stood, I know what it looks like. She couldn't help but giggle to herself at her son's predicament. It was Steve's idea. He's here too. He wanted to wear your clothes, so he made me do it too. He's upstairs. He'll be coming through that door in a minute. Steve? Don't be so silly. Steven wouldn't make you do something like this. He's a sensible boy. And anyway, he's not here. No one else is in the house. He is here. He'll explain everything when he gets here. It's just a bit of fun, I swear. There was panic in Tim's voice as he tried to explain the situation. Good choice in dress, by the way. Petticoats too, very pretty. She teased. Tim was stressed, so appeared not to be amused by the comment. He wanted nothing more in the world at that moment than for Steve to come through that door and explain everything to his mom. Thankfully for Tim, he didn't have to wait much longer for Steve to show up, but unfortunately he was in for another surprise when he finally did. There was a knock at the front door of the house. "Come in!" Tim's mom shouted. "We're in here." "Mom, no." A moment later the door to the front room opened and Steve walked in. But to Tim's dismay, he was no longer wearing his mom's clothes. He had changed back into his usual boy jeans and baggy t-shirt. "Hey Mrs. Klein, what's up?" He then turned to see Tim, still standing by the mirror, just as he had suggested. "Oh, ha ha ha, Tim. What the? Why are you dressed like that?" He could hardly contain himself as he spoke. "What do you mean? This was all your idea?" Tim shouted. "My idea? I've just got here, you saw me walk in." Steve laughed. "Are you for real?" "Steve, what the hell? You were here just now, 10 minutes ago. You were wearing Mom's coat. This was all your idea. You made me dress like this, just for your stupid roleplay." "Whoa Tim, calm down bud. If this is what you want to do when you have the house to yourself, that's fine with me, but take some responsibility, will you? I've just got here. I was going to ask if you wanted to hang out. I've not seen you for ages." Well, I don't know who to believe. Tim's mom looked at both boys in turn, seeing if she could unravel the truth. "He's lying, Mom, it was all his idea." Tim sounded close to tears. "Steven, were you here earlier today? Did you make Tim do this? Please be honest." "No, Mrs. Klein, I swear. I've just got here. You saw me come through the front door just now. This is the first I've heard of Tim wanting to do this kind of thing." "You bastard. You know you were here, you've been here all day. You must have snuck out the back door just now, and then come back in through the front when you knew Mom was home." "Tim, mind your language. You're a lady now, ladies don't use words like that." She giggled and was soon joined by Steve, who also laughed. Tim took a deep breath. He had been stitched up by his so-called friend and there was no way out now, even his own mom was mocking him about it. He just had to grin and bear it and see it through to the end. "I suggest you go and get changed now, Tim, okay? Put my clothes back in my room and we can have a chat about this later, yeah?" "Okay." Tim agreed. He couldn't wait to leave the room. "And I'm sorry you had to see this, Steven. I wouldn't have minded this as much if Tim could have owned up from the start, instead of trying to blame it all on you." "It's fine, Mrs. Klein. He's just experimenting with something new, I guess. But now it's all out in the open, maybe he will be able to talk to you about it more." Steve replied. He was finding it difficult not to laugh, having played such a huge part in Tim's embarrassment. Without saying another word, Tim headed for the door, but not before spotting a sly wink from his friend as he left the room. It had been a humiliating experience for him, and he was glad he was now able to leave. It remained to be seen whether the boys' friendship could ever recover from this strange event. Tim closed the door and immediately went up the stairs to his bedroom, leaving Steve and Tim's mom in the front room to reflect on what had just happened. "How did I do?" Steve smirked. "Oh, you did perfectly, Steven. I don't think that could have gone any better." His face when he realized it was me standing there was just priceless, and then when you came back in and denied it all, it was wonderful. "I know, he totally fell for it, all the way through." Steve added. "Did you stick to the script?" "I did, yes. I said all the lines we agreed on. I said I've been trying on my mom's clothes in secret for years, but always wanted to try on yours. I couldn't believe he'd never done it before." "Perfect. Did he take much convincing?" "No, not really. I mean, once he was convinced it was my thing and he was just doing me a favor, he went along with all of it. After the second run he was on about wanting to finish, but with a bit of persuasion he quickly agreed to do the third run. I even got him to choose his own outfit and do his own makeup this morning." "Did you take any photographs of him?" "No, none. Just like we agreed." "Excellent. And you wore the outfit I chose for you?" "Yes, the green coat, black skirt and boots, red silk scarf, Chanel handbag." "Perfect. I bet you looked a treat yourself." She giggled. "I guess. Not really my thing if I'm being perfectly honest, but it was fun to do once for sure." Steve admitted. "Well, you managed to persuade Tim that it's something you do all the time, and now I apparently think it's something he does all the time, so you sure know how to play a character." "I guess so." Steve smiled, trying his hardest not to blush at the compliment. "Thanks for doing this. I mean, I know it was a bit of a strange request, but I was looking for a way to have a little joke with Tim. Things have been a bit difficult since his dad left us, and he needs cheering up occasionally. And I'm sure he'll come round and see the funny side soon enough. I'll make sure it doesn't ruin your friendship or anything." "That's fine, and I'm sure it won't. I'll just give it a few days before I call round to see him again." "Good idea. Oh, before I forget." She handed Steve a plain white envelope. It was sealed but had something inside. "Is it the amount we agreed?" "It is, yes. You did everything we agreed." She smiled. "Thank you. I should go." Steve put the envelope in his pocket and turned to leave the room. "Okay, thanks again, Steven. Say hi to your mom for me." She gave one final friendly smile as she showed her son's friend to the door. She closed it securely behind him and immediately shouted up the stairs. "Tim, you can come down now." "He's gone." A few seconds later, Tim emerged from his bedroom and slowly made his way down the stairs, meeting his mom once again in the front room. He was still dressed as a woman. "We did it!" Tim squealed as he took his mom by the hands. They instinctively broke into a brief but well-rehearsed waltz around the room. "Darling, you look incredible." "Thanks, Mom." Tim giggled as he let go of his mom's hand so he could give her a 360-degree twirl, followed by another expertly performed curtsy. "I adore this dress. It's gorgeous, isn't it? Absolutely perfect for you. And your makeup, wow. You're really getting good at that." Tim's mom took her son by the hand once again and led him to the couch where they sat down together. Once again Tim's petticoats puffed up and surrounded him as he sat, much to the delight of both of them. Just as before, he crossed his legs and laid his hands in his lap. "So, how did it go? Tell me everything." Did Steven stick to the script? Tim's mum made herself comfortable on the couch, crossing her legs at her ankles. She was dressed elegantly as usual, wearing a long navy blue skirt, white silk blouse and a pair of designer heels. He did okay. I mean, he said all the right lines, how he'd been trying on his mum's clothes in secret for years, always wanted to try on yours. He wasn't all that believable to begin with. It was pretty obvious that he'd never dressed up before, although once we started he got into character and acted out the part quite well. He did go rouge a couple of times and left the script, which was a bit frustrating, but when I told him I wanted to finish after the second run, he insisted we play it through the third time, which is what we wanted him to do. During the second run he actually seemed to get a bit of a kick out of seeing me dressed up. I'm not sure whether he actually did, or whether he was just really getting into the scene. Wow. I didn't think Steve was going to be very good at this. Clearly I was wrong. Yeah, me too. Like I say, once he got into it, he was pretty good. And he didn't take any pictures of you, did he? No, none. Tim shook his head. Good, I told him not to. But we got plenty of him, right? We sure did. Tim smiled. Cameras hidden in the usual places caught everything he said and did in this room and in your bedroom. Plus the security camera outside will have recorded him letting himself into the house. All we have to do is bit of editing, change the timestamp of the outside camera, remove the bits with me on from the inside cameras. Perfect. So we have footage of him letting himself into our house, helping himself to clothes from my wardrobe, then announcing that he's been trying on his mom's clothes in secret for years? It's better than that. He said your clothes are so much more expensive than his mom's clothes, and how she'd kill him if she ever heard him say that. Oh, really? So he really wouldn't want his mom to see the footage then? Absolutely not. Tim laughed. How much does he think he's been paid for this? 100. Wow, so he'll be pretty bummed out when he opens the envelope then. Yep. Monopoly money. 150, 2 20s and a 10. Plus a note explaining we have footage of him dressed as a woman, and we're not afraid to show it to his mom. Brilliant. Tim struggled to contain his excitement. And he will never say anything, not now he knows we have the footage of him. And he has absolutely nothing on you as he did as he was told and took no pictures. It would be his word against ours, which is kinda ironic considering the argument you just had with him. And he thought he was screwing you over. That's the beauty of it. He genuinely thinks this whole thing was your idea, and that I went along with it thinking it was all his idea. But in reality it was my idea. Absolutely. It's genius. How many times have we done this now? Tim's mom asked, curiously. We did it with Darren, James, Angela and Steve, so Steve was the fourth. 4 times. And how does Steve compare to the others? Well, Angela was a disaster, but I think we know why. It just doesn't work as well with girls. Exactly. She was just suspicious all the way through, and I don't think she ever would have fallen for the blackmail. Darren wasn't great at pretending, although I loved that scene we did, him locking me outside in the garden for an hour. James was really good at all of it, a bit too good perhaps. Steve wasn't too far off James once he got into it, although James made a much better woman than Steve did, for sure. Oh God, yeah. The footage we have of James, that coat really suited him. I swear the first time I saw it I thought it was a recording of me. He hasn't spoken to me since though, nor has Angela. Darren seems to have come round now though, he's talking to me again. Well, I think you've taken things up a level today. I've never seen you look so convincing and comfortable as a woman as you do today. Even when we were shouting at each other, you still retained your elegance. And you look absolutely stunning. Aw, thanks, Mum. I mean, this dress certainly helps. It's yours, keep it, the petticoat too. Tim was speechless. He leaned over and gave his mum a hug. There was a brief moment of calm. Both Tim and his mum were content with sitting quietly together on the couch, enjoying each other's company. It was Tim's mum who broke the quiet by asking a question. "Do you still enjoy doing this?" she asked curiously. "Of course, I love doing this. I mean, I'm happy for you to dress up anyway, you know that. We don't always have to go through this whole rigmarole every time though, having someone else involved. One day you'll just run out of friends to bribe and blackmail. No, I like it this way. At least for a little while longer. I'd been trying on your clothes in secret for years, before you came home early one day and finally caught me doing it. I was mortified, of course, but at the same time I found myself quite enjoying the feeling of being caught. I was trapped in a situation, I was humiliated, but it gave me an incredible thrill. Each time we do this, I get the chance to experience the thrill of being caught again and again. And I guess, being caught by you is the ultimate thrill, even if some of the time it is someone else pretending to be you. Having someone else involved too, making up these backstories and playing out these different scenes and ideas, even the embarrassment of having you both stood in front of me, laughing at me, giving me nowhere to turn, and then you take the other person's side, not believing that someone could have put me up to doing this. I can't describe how it makes me feel. I should hate it, but I don't. All I can think about it getting to experience it all over again. I know, sweetie. And I'm happy to help out as much as I can. She smiled. Okay, well in that case, I think we should do this one more time. But we need to go bigger, something even more elaborate, more humiliating for you when you are caught. What do you think? Do you know anyone else we can play with? Tim thought for a moment. There's Andrew from college. I've gotten to know him fairly well the past few months. I reckon he'd probably give it a go, especially if you offer him money. Okay then, Andrew is our guy. I'll start working on a new script right away. I have an idea I've been holding on to for a while. I think now might be the time to try it. What's your idea? Well, like I say, you've set the bar so high today. I honestly think there's only one place we can go with this now. Where's that? Oh, you'll have to wait and see. But you will absolutely love it, I promise. She giggled as she grabbed a pen and a notepad from her bag. Now why don't you be a good little daughter and go make us some tea? Tim stood up and headed towards the kitchen. But before he left the room completely, he turned to see his mum, still giggling to herself. She was still in earshot when she began to sing. Duh, 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 it was the tune of Here Comes the Bride. Oh my God. Tim thought to himself as he began making the tea. He couldn't wait to find out what his mom had in store for him this time, although from her little clue, he had a pretty good idea what it might be.